Chapter 996, Please Pardon Me. When a distress point of plus 1000 was seen in the records, Lu Shu knew that his claim of how the puppet masters have all died had affected Ming Yue greatly. Since Lu Shu started collecting distress points, there were very few occasions when he managed to collect 1000 distress points from someone who was still alive. Lu Shu could understand Ming Yue's condition. If Ming Yue was really one of the members of the puppet masters, the death of Cloudy and Tiger Ji would be an extremely fatal blow to Ming Yue. Your relationship with them must be very good, said Lu Shu calmly. Since you said that all the puppet masters are dead, can you name the remaining puppet masters? Asked Ming Yue calmly. This was a challenge for Lu Shu. He only knew the names of Cloudy and Tiger Ji. The Dream Chooser threw him into the Luniverse, but Lu Shu did not know that the Dream Chooser was also a puppet master. This was the result of not having the correct information. Li Xianyi knew that that individual was the Dream Chooser, but he did not have the chance to tell Lu Shu that. Lu Shu knew about it. However, when the Golden Foundation attacked the puppet masters, only Cloudy and Tiger Ji were left. Ming Yue laughed suddenly. All right, you don't know. Looks like they are all fine. Lu Shu shrugged. You look very proud. Now that I have confirmed your identity, the problem comes. Ming Yue was stunned. What problem? Lu Shu asked, do you know who I am? Ming Yue was speechless. Lu Shu said, please pardon me. From Ming Yue's distress, plus 666. Lu Shu eventually won this round. Lu Shu knew Ming Yue's identity, but Ming Yue was still clueless about Lu Shu's identity. However, Lu Shu did not understand why Ming Yue was trapped in this place. Moreover, where exactly in the Luniverse was Ming Yue? How many puppet masters were there? What on earth happened to the old King of Gods and the new King of Gods? Ming Yue said suddenly, tell me the status of the puppet masters and I will tell you what you want to know. How about that? Lu Shu thought about it. Answer some of my questions first and I will tell you the status of the puppet masters, how about that? Ming Yue said in despair, are we really going to enter this kind of dead cycle? Lu Shu laughed coldly. If you were more sincere, we would not have lost our trust for each other. However, at this moment, the chaos abyss started lighting up. It was probably the first time Lu Shu saw how the chaos abyss looked like when it was lit up. He looked at the far end of the chaos abyss and realized that there was a strange and mysterious symbol on the stone wall. It looked more like a seal which all families in the Luniverse would possess. However, before Lu Shu could see it clearly, he turned and saw Ming Yue's expression change drastically as he said with a deep voice, leave. Lu Shu did not give too many thoughts to this. He had rechanneled his celestial powers into the Black Pearl at that instant and he retreated back to the room in the inn. He sat in the room in the inn in panic. Did someone go to the Chaos Abyss? Was it the person who captured Ming Yue? The new King of Gods of the Luniverse? He was not sure if the other party saw him. He did not want to get involved. Lu Shu had been in touch with Ming Yue for many times and had even drunk with Ming Yue when he was at the loneliest point in his life. Lu Shu felt that Ming Yue was not a bad person. He was being witty to protect himself. After all, he had been imprisoned and it was normal for him to be wary of others. If it was Lu Shu, he would also refuse to tell others about what he knew. Moreover, not only was Lu Shu able to understand Ming Yue, there was a point in time when he felt like saving Ming Yue when he saw the new scars on Ming Yue's wrists and ankles. Suddenly, Yi Qian walked in. Something terrible has happened. Lu Shu was stunned. What? Many of the villagers in the palace are saying that you have been eliminated. I didn't know what was going on and decided to check on your safety. I also thought that you will definitely not be eliminated, said Yi Qian, but he suddenly felt confused. However, there's nothing wrong with you, boss. Why did such news spread? When did this happen? Lu Shu was bothered. Just now, there were shouts of happiness on the streets and some people are even setting off firecrackers, said Qian. Lu Shu was speechless. Who set the firecrackers? Do you remember how he looks like? Was the gamblers of the palace crazy or did I, Lu Shu, say that I am not planning to fight? Why did one set off the firecrackers? He said to Lu Xiaoyu, let's go and take a look. When they stepped on the streets, they saw the villagers walking along the streets as though they were having a massive celebration. Who asked you to collaborate with the gambling dens to be the bookmaker? Who asked you to cheat our hard-earned money? Lu Shu covered his face and pulled onto a young person's arm. He thought that this young person looked familiar but did not know where he had met him before. Cough cough, why is Lu Shu eliminated? The young person looked extremely happy. You didn't know, Lu Shu's name disappeared from the stone tablet. Yi Qian explained softly, there is a stone tablet outside the sword hut. All the names of those selected after the selection of the sword hut would appear on the tablet. Those who are eliminated will have their names disappear. This is the way to determine if one was eliminated or not. Then why are you so happy? Lu Shu was bothered. That brat is extremely ruthless. If his name is no longer on the tablet, it means that he has been eliminated. Doesn't this deserve a celebration? The young person bragged joyfully, do you know how much money I lost from betting on the Black Feather Army? Now that I have joined the selection of the sword hut with him, do you know how much I have been hoping for him to be eliminated? Now that my dream has come true, I really want to punch myself to see if I am dreaming or not. Lu Xiaoyu looked sympathetically at Lu Shu and Yi Qian closed his eyes. Dong. The young person was punched on the chest and could not stand up for a long while. Lu Xiaoyu sighed as she opened her eyes, I think I need to rephrase my sentence. To be accurate, the contestants who have spoken with Lu Shu before will have a 100% elimination rate. Yes, this is a better way to phrase it. Lu Shu looked at the crowd. Why did he get eliminated? He asked Yi Qian, did I violate the rules? No. Yi Qian was also very surprised. However, the stone tablet won't be wrong. It is controlled by the senior disciple of the sword hut. Suddenly, the people in front of them became agitated. Many of them started roaring furiously. Lu Shu did not understand why. However, before he could stop someone and ask, the news had spread. The sword hut had announced that Lu Shu was not eliminated but was given an early offer. In the history of the sword hut selections, he was the first candidate to be given an early offer. Chapter 997, Did we set off the fireworks for nothing? The sword hut appeared in the Luniverse when the palace was built. The sword hut had never made an exception for anyone. Everyone had to go through 2 rounds of assessment. They would only be able to obtain the coveted position after experiencing difficult fights. There had never been any exceptions. But when Lu Shu came to the palace, an exception had been made for him without warning. No one had been prepared. The civilians, who were shouting and jumping for joy, suddenly fell silent. How could he have been recruited in advance? This was not in the rules? But everyone thought about it. What rules? The sword hut simply had not broken their traditional practice, but there was never a rule that said that the sword hut could not break these practices. Were we happy for nothing? Someone stood among the crowd and asked, dumbfounded. Did we set the fireworks off for nothing? They had been wild with joy. But now, it was as if they had fallen into an icy cavern. Not only did their common enemy, Lu Shu, not get eliminated, he had been recruited by the sword hut in advance. This was very awkward. Why did they come? But have you realized something? Since Lu Shu was recruited in advance, the bets in the gambling dens will be stable. No one will be around to mess them up. Someone in the crowd tried to comfort them. No one was sure whether he was comforting the rest or comforting himself. Someone suddenly realized that it had been a long time since the civilians of the palace were bound by hatred for a common enemy. Their cohesion had been strengthened considerably. Typically, neighbors would have conflicts with one another. But when they faced a problematic person like Lu Shu, their attitudes were surprisingly similar. But Lu Shu's house had been destroyed, and Lu Shu had been recruited into the Sword Hut. To the civilians, the Sword Hut was the most revered place besides the palace of the King of Gods. Since Lu Shu was a disciple of the Sword Hut, they would let bygones be bygones. This was a step that everyone knew clearly. If not, what else could they do against Lu Shu? But Li Fangfeng and the rest were unhappy. What gave Lu Shu the right to be recruited into the Sword Hut? What? The Sword Hut did not just look at ability, as they did not care how powerful you were when you entered the Sword Hut. Regardless of whether you were a rank 1 or a rank 2, everyone was the same, as the Sword Hut had confidence that once they had the talent and moral conduct, strength would not be a problem. But what about Lu Shu? Everyone was very unhappy. How was a person with such poor morals like Lu Shu able to pass through the Sword Hut selections? Were you blind? Of course, while this was what they thought, they could not say this out loud. After all, no one could provoke the Sword Hut. This time, Li Fangfeng did not intentionally target anyone. Instead, he led the way to the clouds surrounding the Sword Hut. He wanted to ask them why. I am Li Fangfeng. Senior from the Sword Hut, please come out. There were many candidates behind Li Fangfeng. Everyone was not satisfied. What gave Lu Shu the right to be admitted to the Sword Hut first? I am Yu Wentao. Senior from the Sword Hut, please come out. I am. At this moment, a lazy voice from within the clouds interrupted them. Okay. I am listening. Hurry up and speak. Go away if there is nothing. The voice was neutral, but some femininity could be heard. Why was Lu Shu able to be recruited in advance? The Sword Hut has never done this before. This is not according to the rules. Li Fangfeng exclaimed in a loud voice. More and more civilians from the palace gathered around. Everyone wanted to see what was happening. This affair had nothing much to do with them, but they were curious. Thus, they willingly came to observe the situation. The voice within the clouds said in an impatient tone, "What rules? The King of Gods has not said anything. The Sword Hut is the rule. Can't you understand this?" At this moment, it was as if a giant was stepping out of the clouds. Even the ground started to tremble. It's Gu Lingfei, someone recognized her. Not only was her voice symbolic, there were other obvious characteristics as well. At that moment, a 2-story tall black panther slowly walked out. A young girl sat with her legs crossed on top of the panther. She wore white robes with a red rim. Her hands were hidden within her sleeves. Li Fangfeng and the rest could not help but step back. She was one of the 4 masters in the Sword Hut. The Black Panther stared coldly at the crowd, but did not act rashly. It was as if it was an obedient beast when the young girl was sitting on its head. Li Fangfeng bowed and said in a softer voice, "But Lu Shu does not have proper moral conduct. The Sword Hut is revered by the citizens because..." Wait. Once again, Gu Lingfei interrupted him impatiently. Why has the Sword Hut been able to stand strong in the universe? Is it because our proper moral conduct is respected by the people? Is it because our disciples are found everywhere? No. Let me tell you. It's because we can fight. Is there anything else? Li Fangfeng lowered his head and clenched his teeth. This is not fair. Fine. Stop bending over like that. The Sword Hut is all-seeing. If you are not bad, you will definitely be able to enter the Sword Hut. If you do not qualify, there is no use acting. Gu Lingfei looked down at Li Fangfeng. Our senior disciple has been kind enough to recruit Lu Shu in advance. Do you think that we are biased? We are protecting you. Everyone was dumbfounded. What else could they say? Had Lu Shu become so strong in the eyes of the Sword Hut? Did the Sword Hut think that Lu Shu would be a threat to the rest of the candidates? Do you think that he only wants the ranking and the money from the gambling dens? Gu Lingfei said with disdain, have you not realized that he has planned on eliminating all of you from the very beginning? Not allowing Lu Shu to participate in the selections with all of you is the fairest. The observers all gasped in shock. It could not be. Was Lu Shu so crazy? But if this had been said by a master of the Sword Hut, they did not doubt it. They would believe that this was real. For some reason, everyone realized that they might have underestimated the commander of the Weiwu army. No wonder he was able to make a name for the Weiwu army. But everyone felt that he was just doing it for the money. Go away. He is not someone you can catch up to. If you want to compare yourself to him, why not refine your own training? Gu Lingfei rode her Black Panther back into the clouds. She slowly disappeared into the white clouds. The explanation of why the Sword Hut had recruited Lu Shu in advance started to spread throughout the palace. Everyone who heard this was shocked, as the Sword Hut had not admitted the potential and talent of any candidate in a very long time. But this time, Gu Lingfei had stepped out and stated that Lu Shu was amazing. He was not on the same level as the rest. At that moment, Sun Zhongyang, Mo Xiaoya, and the rest were chatting in the Sun residence. They were the minority who were not surprised when they heard the news, as they had experienced Lu Shu's sound of Tao for themselves. Chapter 998, Stopping My Livelihood. Stop blocking me. Lu Shu was furious. Just as everyone thought that Lu Shu was lucky enough to be recruited into the Sword Hut in advance, Lu Shu was unhappy. Where would his money come from? Earlier, he had wanted to defeat all the candidates in one go and earn money from this. After all, other than his soap business, he only had the gambling den as his temporary source of income. That was right. He treated this as a business. But after the Sword Hut announced that he had been recruited in advance, his bets disappeared from the gambling dens in the palace. From now on, Lu Shu was an official disciple of the Sword Hut. No gambling den felt that there was any potential to earn money from him. We are not blocking you. Lu Xiaoyu rolled her eyes and said, if you want to go, then go. But I don't think you can defeat them now. Yi Qian said, congratulations, boss. But Yi Qian did not have a large reaction like the others. If the Sword Hut was willing to allow Yi Qian to enter the Sword Hut, he would definitely be very happy. But who was Lu Shu? To Yi Qian, Lu Shu joining the Sword Hut was only part of their plan. There was not much to it. According to Gu Lingfei, if the King of Gods had not said anything, the Sword Hut was the rule. There was a condition behind this. If the King of Gods did not appear, the Sword Hut was the rule. But to Yi Qian, who was Lu Shu? He was the King of Gods. Thus, Yi Qian felt that Lu Shu, joining the Sword Hut, was not a particular cause of celebration. It was only part of their plan. Lu Shu sighed. What do we do now? Do we report to the Sword Hut? Lu Xiaoyu thought about it and said, they did not specify when you have to report to them. Furthermore, although your bets have disappeared, the bets of the other candidates have not. Who said that outsiders are not allowed to eliminate Sword Hut candidates? Lu Shu's eyes lit up. Lu Xiaoyu, you are a genius. This time, Lu Shu had thought in the wrong direction. When he heard the news, his first thought was that his business was done for. But with Lu Xiaoyu's reminder, he suddenly realized he could still attack the other candidates, as long as he was not caught by the Sword Hut. Lu Shu was very clear of the reason why the Sword Hut had recruited him in advance. They were worried that he would kill the rest of the candidates, right? But to the Sword Hut, as long as Lu Shu was recruited, he should stop. But they had underestimated Lu Shu's pursuit for wealth. We can live in that house safely now. Lu Xiaoyu said, Yi Qian, contact the construction workers in the palace. I have a blueprint. They can build the house according to the blueprint. Let's go take a look at the house. Lu Xiaoyu was not too worried about what would happen when Lu Shu joined the sword hut. She was only concerned about whether they would have a safe place to stay in the palace. Lu Shu was now part of the sword hut. The complaints of the civilians towards Lu Shu would also disappear as Lu Shu had joined the sword hut. This was the influence of the sword hut. At first, Lu Xiaoyu was worried that after Lu Shu came, the strange beauty standards in the universe would cause many girls to admire Lu Shu. But now, it seemed that she had worried too much. Lu Shu's ability to cause others to hate him exceeded his good looks. It had reached a point where his looks did not matter. But they had to be alert. After all, since Lu Shu had become a disciple of the sword hut, his identity would attract the attention of others. But she thought about it. Since Lu Shu was about to enter the sword hut, others would not have the opportunity to meet him. She thus calmed down. The three of them came to the house that the Songji gambling den had given Lu Shu. It was in ruins. When the Songji family gave presents, they would definitely give the best gifts. As one of the upper wealthy families, they had to live up to their name. Thus, even the plants in the house were species that were treasured by the universe. But now, everything had been trampled flat by the rage of the civilians. At that moment, Lu Shu suddenly turned and looked at the street. Many civilians were secretly looking in their direction behind their doors or through windows. The vendors along the road stopped selling their products. They were focused on Lu Shu and the rest. Lu Shu felt as if he was a panda at the zoo, being observed so intently. Everyone was curious. This was their first time calmly seeing a calm Lu Shu. A group of people approached them. They seemed to be the slaves of wealthy families. They carried many red boxes. A young man happily led the way. Those who did not know what was happening would assume that the young man was getting married. The young man approached Lu Shu. I am Tu Lu from the West region. Congratulations on becoming a disciple of the sword hut. These are some gifts that the Tu family has prepared for you. Please enjoy them. Lu Shu was dumbfounded. The people in the universe were very kind. He felt as if he was the #1 scholar in ancient times on Earth. In the past, all of them were strangers. But once he had done well in the imperial examination, all the influential officials started to surround him. They discarded any hatred they had towards him in the past. Now that he had joined the sword hut, his former enemies had come and given him presents to build good relations. It was as if what had happened in the past had never happened at all. Lu Shu looked at Tu Lu. He paused for 2 seconds. Suddenly, he said, What are your odds? It's impolite if you don't state your odds in your self-introduction. Tu Li's smile suddenly grew stiff. From Tu Li's distress, plus 666. Tu Lu felt a great sense of danger. He silently remembered his own odds. He was sure that if his odds were very high, he would die. Yi Qian, could you check how high his odds are now? Lu Shu turned and asked Yi Qian. Yi Qian said, his odds are rather low. It's not worth it. Lu Shu suddenly smiled at Tu Lu. Hello, Tu Lu from the West region. I have admired you for a very long time. What did you bring? Tu Lu looked at the cheerful Lu Shu. He suddenly felt as if his low odds had saved his life. But he could not understand. He had already joined the sword hut. Was he still planning to attack the rest of the sword hut candidates? There was no such rule. But Tu Lu thought about it. No one had said that outsiders could not attack the sword hut candidates. Even if he was a disciple of the sword hut. I will take my leave. Tu Lu was panicking beyond belief. He had wanted to rope in Lu Shu. If he joined the sword hut, they would be friends. Even if Tulu did not join the Sword Hut, they knew a disciple of the Sword Hut. Gu Lingfei, one of the masters of the Sword Hut, had said that Lu Shu's potential might allow him to advance to the Master Realm. There were only so many masters in the Luniverse. Who did not want to get to know them? But it seemed like their roles had not changed much. He was still meat in the eyes of Lu Shu, and Lu Shu was the knife. If someone asked you for your odds the moment he met you, would you not be scared? Chapter 999, Senior Disciple of Sword Hut. When Tulu realized that he was in danger, he prepared to leave. It was far too dangerous to be with Lu Shu. When he turned around, Lu Shu suddenly asked him to stop. Lu Shu looked at Tulu and the rest. He was slightly puzzled. Are you bringing these gifts back? No, no. Tulu smiled stiffly. How could I? Stand there and don't move. Lu Shu then said a few words to Yi Qian. Thereafter, Yi Qian hurriedly left. Tulu had an unpleasant premonition. He curiously asked, where is he going? Lu Shu naturally said, nothing, nothing. He's just buying some things. Tulu heaved a sigh of relief. But at that moment, another group of people came from another direction. Tulu was suddenly overjoyed. It was another candidate of the Sword Hut selections. He seemed to be representing his family gifts to try and rope in Lu Shu. Everyone realized the importance of Lu Shu. Sun Zhongyang's father, Sun Xuanwen, had worked hard for many years just to be appraised by a senior disciple of the Sword Hut. Gu Lingfei's appearance to comment on Lu Shu's potential seemed like an imperial order. But Tulu did not care about these. He just hoped that someone would be able to share the impact of Lu Shu's firepower. But something unexpected had happened. Lu Shu asked him for his odds, took the gifts, and asked him to stay behind as well. There was nothing behind this, but Tulu suddenly felt as if Lu Shu was treating them like storage goods. Not long after, a third person came. The same thing happened. The fourth person came, but he was not a candidate of the Sword Hut selections. Lu Shu let him go. Tulu and the rest did not dare to leave. The three of them started to chat. One of them asked, are you a candidate? Yes, I am a candidate as well. You too? Yes, me too. When the sixth person came, they sat on the ruins and looked at Lu Shu, who was preparing something. They were very bored. At first, they were very nervous. But they gradually relaxed and even joked around. At first, when only one of them faced Lu Shu, they had a lot of pressure. But with many people around, they were not so scared. When the sixth person came, Lu Shu suddenly looked at them. Announce that you are forfeiting. Tulu was speechless. What in the world? Everyone was dumbfounded. There was 1 rank 1 and 5 rank 2s. Lu Shu had made them wait so long so that they could forfeit together. Tulu finally knew what he had felt just now. Lu Shu had stored them here like goods. But how did Lu Shu have the confidence to settle 1 rank 1 and 5 rank 2s at the same time? Tulu and the rest thought about it. Then, they looked at one another. The despair in their eyes revealed their true thoughts. This fellow was very powerful. Tulu carefully asked, can I ask you something? What bet did you place this time? Our odds are very low. Furthermore, Tulu wanted to say that the servant had left a long time ago. Thus, how did Yi Qian know who would come later? Lu Shu thought about it. The gambling den has a fixed bet on how many people will be eliminated that day. I bet that 6 or more people will be eliminated. The odds are very high. Tulu was speechless. Although the odds that they would be eliminated was not very high, there were still other bets with high odds. But why did you think about attacking 6 people from the very beginning? Where did this confidence come from? But Tulu felt that his greatest strength was recognizing the current situation. He asked in a low voice, "How about this? I will redeem myself with a price higher than the odds." Lu Shu's eyes lit up. "Brother." Tu Lu was speechless. The name, brother, had appeared once again. Although the way he had become his brother was very complicated, suddenly becoming brothers with a disciple of the Sword Hut was not bad. What if he suddenly made rapid advances in his career? Lu Xiaoyu felt that in the future, Lu Shu's brothers would occupy the world. But Lu Shu felt that this was not proper. "I have already placed my bets in the gambling dens. Why don't you redeem yourself and trick someone else here? What kind of condition is that?" Tu Lu was annoyed. Something was wrong. Tu Lu suddenly changed his way of thinking. Lu Shu wanted to eliminate 6 people. Thus, if he tricked someone to come here, he would definitely eliminate a potential enemy. Although Lu Shu's greed for money was frustrating, to put it another way, he could also become your aide as long as you had money. Tu Lu gritted his teeth. "Look at it this way. What if I give you more money to ensure my safety in the first round of the selections?" Lu Shu thought about it. "How much?" "4 million notes." 5 million, said Lu Shu. "Deal." Tu Lu exclaimed with confidence. "Wait. What did you say?" "Deal." Again. 4 million notes, said Tu Lu. He was puzzled. Lu Shu calmly said, 8 million. Tu Lu was speechless. From Tu Li's distress, plus 748. Typically, when people bargained, it would be complicated when the other person did not counter-bargain. Furthermore, typical people would often take back their words and be embarrassed. But Lu Shu was amazing. He was never embarrassed. In the end, they made a deal for 8 million notes. The others also paid the price for their freedom. Then, they asked their subordinates to spread the news. They had to trick people into becoming Lu Shu's sacrifices. They spread the news in a very shrewd manner. A family had just sent Lu Shu gifts in an attempt to rope him in. Other people listened in on the news. These people seemed to chat in a relaxed manner with Lu Shu. They were surrounded by gifts. It looked like a gift party. This was what competition between the wealthy families was like. No one wanted to lose out to the others. If others were able to rope Lu Shu in with money, they would be able to do so as well. But when they came to Lu Shu, everyone realized that something was wrong. After Tu Lu and the rest finished discussing with Lu Shu, they left, smiling. The rest of the people looked at Lu Shu in despair. The day that Lu Shu had become a disciple of the Sword Hut, everyone thought that the selections would go back to normal. But the gamblers in the palace jumped into the Longyin River once again. Behind the clouds of the Sword Hut, Gu Lingfei rode on her black panther and walked up the mountain. When she saw the young man at the peak of the mountain, she was upset. "Senior, why don't we cancel his qualifications and chase him out of the palace? If our master is here, he will definitely not stand to see this fellow." There was a barely visible white sword in between the eyebrows of the young man. He did not open his eyes. He said, "I am afraid that he might turn his shame into anger and destroy the Sword Hut." Chapter 1000, Take a drastic measure to deal with a situation. Just as all the candidates of the Sword Hut selection were feeling unsafe, the selection was to begin half a month earlier than stipulated. When Gu Lingfei went out of the clouds on the back of the black leopard to announce this news, all the people of the palace were stunned, including the aristocrats. Everyone knew why the first round of selection was brought forward. There were too many accidents in this round of Sword Hut selections. For example, for the first time in history, someone was given an early offer to the Sword Hut. Moreover, in the past, none of the selections had ever had a change in time, but a change was made in this year. What was the difference between this year's Sword Hut selections and the past years? In the past, Lu Shu did not participate, but he did this year. Many people realized that Gu Lingfei's face was pretty black. She looked as if she was in a terrible mood. On ordinary days, nobody dared to make Gu Lingfei angry. Very few people in the sword hut showed their faces. They seemed to be practicing all day long and was unconcerned about what was happening in the world. In the sword hut, the senior disciple seemed to be taking care of the matters, but Gu Lingfei was the person who was in charge of everyday maintenance. Therefore, Gu Lingfei was actually the chief manager of the sword hut, and she was the most liked person by the owner of the sword hut. Before Gu Lingfei became a master, she was rather demanding. Nobody in the palace could deal with her. After all, what could they do to a disciple who was the most liked by the owner of the sword hut? When Gu Lingfei became a master, many of the aristocrats had given up hope. They thought that Gu Lingfei would become more demanding. However, the result was shocking. Gu Lingfei recollected her temper and was able to see the bigger picture. At this moment, Gu Lingfei wanted to kill Lu Shu, as the entire issue of the sword hut selection involved the sword hut's reputation. After the end of the second round of examination, the sword hut ceremony would be conducted. Every single descendant of the sword hut would attend the ceremony, and different powers would watch the ceremony too. They were there to watch the ceremony not because of the grandeur, but rather because during the past ceremonies, the owner of the sword hut would demonstrate their swordplay, allowing many people to benefit from it. Ever since the owner of the sword hut disappeared, the senior disciple of the sword hut took over the task of demonstrating his swordplay. Although the senior disciple of the sword hut was not as powerful as the master, when the master personally demonstrated their swordplay, countless people were attracted too. Therefore, the ceremony of the sword hut became the most important thing in the universe. Just as the entire universe was focusing on the sword hut, Lu Shu appeared. Gu Lingfei wanted to kill Lu Shu, but the senior disciple did not agree. Instead, he said some things that Gu Lingfei did not understand. Gu Lingfei respected the senior disciple who sat on the top of the mountain all year long practicing his skills. However, she felt that the senior disciple had something that he was unwilling to say. What could Lu Shu, a mere rank 1, do? At the very most, he would become a master. Could he tear the sword hut down? Gu Lingfei had thought of some other possibilities. However, when she checked with the senior discipline, he negated all of her guesses. Now that the sword hut selections were suddenly brought forward, the other candidates who did not want to see Lu Shu were tortured tremendously. To Lu Shu, he felt as though he was struck by lightning. It was such a drastic measure to deal with the situation. That was because he could not get onto the battle stage of the first round of selections. Besides that, everyone was in the sword hut. Even if he was extremely daring, he would not dare to stir things up in the sword hut. Oh no. I am screwed, Lu Shu sighed. Time to strike a deal with the Sun family. I won't be able to make any more money in the future. Lu Xiaoyu nodded. From the money we have saved, apart from a small fraction of the money to be used as expenses, we can already purchase 12,000 sets of magical armor. Our gains are pretty good. However, I'm not sure if Sun Zhongyang is able to get us so many sets of magical armor. When Lu Shu went over, Sun Zhongyang was stunned. He initially thought that Lu Shu did not have much money and could barely use his money to buy 1,200 sets of magical armor. Now, he realized that the entire Sun family had insufficient supplies. After all, the Sun family did not have to be involved in battles. Sun Zhongyang looked at Lu Shu and said, "Give me 2 months' time, I will rush a batch of armor out for you." Lu Shu smacked his lips. The Sun family don't even have 12,000 sets of magical armor? Sun Zhongyang felt terrible. This question sounded as though the Sun family was very weak. It was clearly because Lu Shu was good at earning money. That amount of armor was nothing much to the Sun family. However, who would keep so many sets of magical armor? Most of the armies in the Luniverse did not like to use such expensive equipment. To those who had assumed positions, life was worth nothing as the social classes were fixed. Those with a lower social class status were as powerless as ants. In the past, the rules were also set for the territories of the Lords of Heaven. People only started to attack each other in recent years, and the boundaries were blurred. However, it was not to the extent such that people fought to their deaths. Everyone was still afraid of that individual in the palace of the King of Gods. The boundaries were set fairly by the old King of Gods, and each person had a quarter of the territory. However, did they really not have any other thoughts? Probably not. Sometimes, the battle on the borders became means for testing these boundaries. As for what people were testing, it was impossible for ordinary aristocrats to guess. All right, I will give you 2 months' time. After 2 months, I will return to the Sun family to collect my armor, said Lu Shu. Why do you need so many sets of armor? Are you planning to attack someone? Sun Zhongyang did not understand. The Weiwu army only has 5,000 soldiers in total. The magical armors are not easy to spoil, it won't be used up so quickly. Can't I keep them? Lu Shu was unhappy. Just do your business. Why are you concerned about what I am using them for? Well, he could not tell Sun Zhongyang that he was planning to bring them back to Earth. Lu Shu and Nie Ting, as well as the other heavenly networks, would not view the rest of the members' lives in the heavenly network as powerless and worthless. A life is a life. With an additional set of armor, everyone would feel more secure. However, at this moment, Lu Shu saw someone from the Sun family run towards Sun Zhongyang and whisper to him. Lu Shu wanted to go forward to listen to what they were saying. Sun Zhongyang pushed Lu Shu. You are almost touching me. Cough cough. Lu Shu was not sorry. What's wrong? The ceremony of the sword hut is being brought forward, you know that, Sun Zhongyang said. However, what is more shocking is that the people under the Lord of Heaven have also arrived early. Just now, the people under Duanmu Huangqi from the west region have entered the palace with their horses. There was a large group of carriages behind them. Some people speculate that Duanmu Huangqi has come personally to view the ceremony.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty, man, we just putting on a show.